You know that feeling when you're really trying to build a new habit, like maybe finally sticking to that morning walk or, I don't know, cutting down on screen time.
Oh, yeah.
And it just feels like you're pushing a massive boulder uphill.
Totally. It feels impossible sometimes.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into the science behind habits, how they're actually formed, and maybe more importantly, how we can build the good ones we want to stick.
Exactly. We're drawing on some really fascinating research, practical frameworks, too.
Right. The goal here is really to pull out the key insights, give you some actionable steps you can use, like right away.
Right.
You know, without needing a PhD in behavioral psychology.
Yeah, exactly. We want to look at habits not as these like mysterious things you're either good at or bad at, but more as fundamental processes, things happening in our brains that we can actually learn to understand and, well, influence. We'll be digging into why those tiny daily choices, the small stuff, can have such a massive impact over time, and also uncovering the sort of hidden power of our own identity in shaping which habits actually stick around.
Okay, let's get into it then. One of the really powerful ideas I thought was this concept of atomic habits. This idea that tiny, like seemingly insignificant 1% improvements each day, they can lead to absolutely massive results down the line. It almost sounds too simple.
It does, but the math is kind of stunning when you look at it.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you genuinely get just 1% better at something every single day for a year, you don't end up 365% better. You end up like 37 times better. It's that compounding effect.
Wow, okay. That's huge. Is there like a real-world example of this?
Oh, absolutely. Think about British cycling. For years, honestly, they were pretty unremarkable, nothing special.
Yeah.
Then they brought in a coach, Dave Brailsford, who focused entirely on what he called marginal gains. Tiny 1% improvements in absolutely everything.
You could.
Oh, you know, the obvious stuff like aerodynamics of the bikes, athlete nutrition, but also things you wouldn't even think of, like the best massage gel for recovery, testing fabrics in wind tunnels, even teaching riders the best way to wash their hands to avoid illness. Just tiny, tiny things.
Right, across the board.
Exactly. And the result? They went from mediocre to dominating Olympic cycling, winning the Tour de France multiple times. It all came from those tiny gains adding up.
That's incredible. It really shows how those small, consistent efforts, they compound.
They do, but the tricky part is that the compounding is often invisible in the short term.
Right.
It's kind of like heating an ice cube that's sitting at, say, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. You add heat, it goes to 26, 27, 31 degrees.
And nothing looks different.
Nothing. All that energy is being stored, latent potential, but then you hit 32 degrees, just one more degree, and suddenly, boom, transformation. It melts into water.
That's the plateau of latent potential you mentioned.
Exactly. And we often give up in what the source calls the valley of disappointment.
Because we're putting in the work.
You're putting in the effort, heating that ice cube, but you don't see the results yet. You don't realize that all that effort is accumulating just, beneath the surface. You're almost at that breakthrough point.
It's so easy to get discouraged then. You feel like you're spinning your wheels.
Totally.
But maybe, based on what we're looking at, we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just these big, distant goals,
Yeah.
maybe we should be thinking more about building systems.
That's such a crucial distinction. Goals are good. They give us direction, right? But they often have limitations.
How so?
Well, for one, the change they bring can be temporary. Like, you hit a weight loss goal, great. But if you haven't changed the underlying habits...
The weight comes back.
Exactly. Goals can also kind of restrict happiness. Like, I can't be happy until I reach this target.
Yeah, I felt that.
And it can lead to this weird yo-yo effect. Think about training hard for a marathon. You cross the finish line, you achieve the goal, and then what?
You stop running.
Right, because the motivation was tied only to that event. A systems-first approach, though, it's different. It's about creating sustainable, ongoing processes. It's about falling in love with the daily practice.
The routine itself.
Yeah, the routines that lead to improvement. You get that sense of accomplishment just by, showing up and doing your system. And then the long-term progress, that just becomes a natural byproduct.
Okay, so focusing on the process, the system, not just the outcome, that makes a lot of sense for like actual long-term change.
Definitely.
Now, another really interesting angle was how our habits are so deeply tangled up with our sense of identity. Can you unpack that a bit?
Absolutely. This is fascinating. There's this feedback loop, right, between what we do and who we believe we are.
Okay.
The source material talks about 3 levels of change. There's outcome change, that's about what you get, like losing weight. There's process change, what you do, like going to the gym. And then there's identity change, who you become, like identifying as a healthy person. And the argument is that identity change, that's the most powerful, the most enduring.
Why is that?
Because our habits aren't just isolated actions. They're how we embody our identity. They're like little signals we send to ourselves and to the world about the kind of person we are.
Huh.
Think about it. Making your bed every morning, it's not just a chore. It's a small way you reinforce your identity as, say, an organized person.
Okay.
Or writing every day. It's not just about hitting a word count. It's about embodying the identity of a writer, a creative person.
So it's less about wanting an outcome and more about becoming the kind of person who naturally does the things that lead to that outcome.
Precisely. Cultivating that identity.
How do we actually do that, though? How do you shift something as fundamental as identity?
Well, the research suggests this kind of two-step process. First, you got to decide, what type of person do you want to be? What are your values? What's the vision?
Okay, define it.
Define it. Then, and this is the key part, you prove it to yourself with small wins, tiny actions.
Small wins,
Yeah.
like the 1% improvements.
Exactly. Every action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become.
A vote? I like that.
There's a great little story in the sources about someone who wanted to lose weight. Instead of obsessing over the scale, they started asking themselves, in different situations, just one question. What would a healthy person do?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, faced with a menu, would a healthy person order the salad or the burger after dinner? Would a healthy person go for a walk or crash on the couch?
So those small choices, guided by that identity question.
They reinforce the new self-image. Repeated over time, those healthier habits started feeling natural, like part of who they were, not something they were forcing.
Wow. That's a powerful way to frame it. Every choice is a vote for who you're becoming. Okay, all right. So we've got the power of small habits, the importance of identity. Now let's get into the real nuts and bolts, the mechanics. This 4 laws of behavior change thing. This sounds like the practical toolkit.
It really is. These 4 laws, cue, craving, response, and reward, they basically describe the fundamental cycle behind every habit, good or bad.
Okay, cue, craving, response, reward. Walk us through them. What's the cue?
The cue is the trigger. It's the thing that kicks off the behavior. It's basically a signal that predicts a reward is coming.
Like a notification sound on your phone.
Exactly. That's a modern cue. Our brains are constantly scanning, looking for these cues that we've learned lead to good stuff. For our ancestors, maybe a rustle in the bushes meant food.
Right.
Today, it could be that phone ping or, the smell of coffee brewing or even just the time of day.
And these cues can become invisible, right? We don't even notice them.
Totally. They become automatic. Like maybe there's a candy dish on a colleague's desk you walk past every day.
And you just grab one without thinking.
Precisely. That's why step 1 in changing habits is often just awareness. Noticing your current cues. The research even suggests using something like a habit scorecard, just writing down your daily actions to see what triggers what.
Okay, makes sense. So the cue triggers it. What's next? Craving.
Yep, craving, that's the motivational force. It's the desire to change your internal state. It's really important to get this. You're not usually craving the habit itself, like the physical act of smoking a cigarette.
They're craving the feeling.
You're craving the feeling it provides, the relief from stress, the nicotine hit, whatever it is you've associated with it. Every craving is tied to some deeper underlying motive, wanting pleasure, avoiding pain, connection, status.
Gotcha. So the craving is the motivation, then comes the response.
The response is the actual habit you perform, the action itself. And this is where friction really matters.
Ah, the passive least resistance idea.
Exactly. How much effort, physical or mental, does it take? We're wired to conserve energy, so we naturally drift towards easier options.
Makes sense. And the last part, reward.
The reward, that's what satisfies the craving. It completes the loop. It essentially tells your brain, hey, that sequence cue, craving, response, that worked out well. Let's remember that and do it again next time.
Cue, craving, response, reward. Okay, I think I've got the cycle. So now the big question. How do we use these 4 laws intentionally to build good habits? Habits we actually want.
Okay, so the framework gives us practical strategies for each law. Let's start with the first law. Make it obvious.
Make the cue obvious.
Right. One great way is using implementation intentions. Sounds fancy, but it's simple. You make a super specific plan. The formula is, I will behavior at time and location.
Okay, like I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my living room.
Perfect. It removes the ambiguity. Your brain knows exactly when and where the cue is supposed to happen. Another powerful technique is habit stacking.
Stacking. like building on existing habit.
Exactly. You link your desired new habit to one you already do automatically. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
Oh, I like that. So after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Yes, or after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes.
You leverage the momentum of the existing habit.
Smart. What else for making it obvious? Designing your environment is huge. Make the cues for your good habits unavoidable. Want to read more?
A book on the nightstand.
Exactly. Want to eat healthier snacks? Put fruit in a bowl on the counter, not hidden in the fridge drawer. Want to drink more water?
Keep a water bottle on your desk, visible.
Right. And the flip side works for breaking bad habits, make those cues invisible. Hide the junk food, put the game controller away. Context is really powerful here too.
Context.
Yeah, the environment itself becomes the cue. You might only smoke when you're out with certain friends, or always grab a snack when you sit on a specific couch. Sometimes changing your environment, even temporarily, like trying to build a new habit while on vacation, can be surprisingly effective because you escape your old triggers.
Interesting. So new environment, easier to build new habits.
Yeah.
Okay, law 1, make it obvious. What's law 2?
Law 2. Make it attractive. We need to make the habit appealing, desirable.
How do we do that? Especially for habits that feel like chores.
Well, understanding dopamine helps. It's not just released when we experience pleasure, but also in anticipation of it. That anticipation is a powerful driver.
So we need to build anticipation.
We can leverage it.
Yeah.
One technique mentioned is temptation bundling. This is where you pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Oh, okay. Like you only let yourself watch your favorite Netflix show while you're on the exercise bike.
Exactly. You bundle the temptation, Netflix, with the beneficial habit, exercise, or maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while you're doing household chores.
That could work. What else makes a habit attractive?
Social norms are huge. We're heavily influenced by the people around us, our close friends, the groups we belong to, the people we see as powerful or successful.
So hang out with people who have the habits you want.
Pretty much. Joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior makes it way more attractive. If everyone in your running group gets up early for runs, it feels more normal, more appealing for you to do it too. We naturally imitate the habits of the groups we belong to and the people we admire.
Right, makes sense. Surround yourself with the right influences. Okay, law 3.
Law 3, make it easy. Reduce the friction. Make it as effortless as possible to do the right thing.
So this is where we tackle that feeling of it being too hard.
Exactly. And the key here is focusing on action, not just motion. Planning to go to the gym is motion. Actually going, even for 5 minutes, is action.
Motion feels productive, but action is what forms the habit.
Precisely. Repetition is what matters most. It literally rewires your brain. Neurons that fire together wire together, as the saying goes. And importantly, habit formation seems to depend more on the frequency of performing the habit, not necessarily how long you do it each time.
So doing something small every day is better than one huge effort once a week.
Generally, yes, for building the automaticity. That leads to a really great strategy, the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule.
Yeah, you scale down any new habit so that it takes less than 2 minutes to start.
Okay, give me examples.
Read before bed each night becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
Ah, so you're just making the starting part incredibly easy.
Ridiculously easy. The point isn't just to do those 2 minutes. The point is to master the art of showing up. Once you've started, it's much easier to continue if you feel like it. But even if you only do the 2 minutes, you still cast a vote for that identity. You've reinforced the habit loop.
That's brilliant. It tackles procrastination head on. What else makes things easy?
Reducing friction in your environment again. Laying out workout clothes the night before. Pre-chopping vegetables for healthy meals. Unplugging the TV after use or putting it in a closet. Deleting distracting apps from your phone.
Increasing friction for bad habits, decreasing it for good ones?
Exactly. And commitment devices can help too. These are choices you make in the present that lock in better behavior in the future, like buying food in individual packages to prevent overeating, or setting up automatic transfers to your savings account. Or Victor Hugo apparently having his servant hide his clothes so he couldn't go outside and had to write.
Extreme, but I get the principle. Okay, last law.
Law 4. Make it satisfying. The habit has to feel good. There needs to be some kind of immediate reward.
But lots of good habits have delayed rewards, right? Like exercise or saving money.
They do. Our brains evolved in an immediate return environment. We're wired to value instant gratification over long-term payoffs. So the challenge is to inject some immediate satisfaction into those good delayed return habits.
How can we do that?
Habit trackers are a fantastic tool. Just the simple act of checking off a box after you complete your habit can feel satisfying. It gives you visual proof of your progress.
That little dopamine hit from checking the box.
Exactly. It makes progress visible and creates momentum. You get that feeling of don't break the chain. Seeing that unbroken streak can be really motivating.
Yeah, I can see that. Any other ways?
Finding ways to measure progress can help, even if it's not the main outcome. Like for weight loss, maybe tracking non-scale victories, like clothes fitting better or having more energy, or simply giving yourself a small, healthy reward immediately after completing the habit. The key is that the end of the behavior needs to be satisfying.
Okay, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. That's the framework for building good habits. Now, how do we use this to break the bad ones? Just flip it.
Exactly. You use the inversion of the 4 laws.
So law 1 becomes make it invisible.
Right. Reduce exposure to the cues that trigger the bad habit. If you eat junk food when it's on the counter, put it away. Unfollow social media accounts that make you feel bad or trigger cravings.
Okay. Law 2 inversion, make it unattractive.
Yep. Reframe your mindset. Focus on the downsides of the bad habit, not the perceived benefits. Maybe create a ritual where you consciously list the negative consequences right before you're tempted to do it. Make the prospect less appealing.
Got it. Law 3 inversion, make it difficult.
Increase the friction. Make the bad habit harder to do. Leave your phone in another room while you work. Delete the apps you overuse. Use website blockers or commitment devices, like asking a spouse to hide the credit card if you overspend online.
Add steps, add difficulty.
Yeah, right.
And the final inversion, Law 4, make it unsatisfying.
Exactly. Introduce an immediate cost or consequence to the bad habit. An accountability partner is great for this. Just knowing you have to report your failure to someone can be a powerful deterrent.
The social cost.
Right. Or you could create a habit contract. This is where you state your intention to stop a behavior and establish a clear, often public or financial penalty if you fail. There are stories of people writing checks to organizations they despise, held by a friend, to be mailed if they relapse.
Well, that adds some serious stakes. Make it painful to fail.
It makes the consequence immediate and undesirable.
Okay, the 4 laws and their inversions, that's a really solid, practical framework. Now, the material also touched on some more advanced tactics, right? Beyond the basics.
Yeah, a few interesting points. One was about talent and genetics. The idea isn't that genes don't matter, but that they might clarify what kind of work is likely to be more satisfying or easier for you. It also mentioned the power of combining skills like Scott Adams with Dilbert, combining okay drawing skills with good business knowledge and a great sense of humor to create something unique. Finding your niche.
Winning by being different, not just better.
Exactly. Then there's the Goldilocks rule.
Right, not too hard, not too easy.
Yeah, staying motivated by working on tasks that are right at the edge of your current abilities. Challenging enough to be interesting, but not so hard you give up. It keeps you in that state of flow.
But what about boredom? Even if the task is right, don't we just get bored of habits sometimes?
That's a huge threat to success, absolutely. The research suggests that variable rewards can help combat boredom, think slot machines. You don't win every time. That unpredictability keeps you hooked. Finding ways to introduce novelty or small variations into your routine can help.
Interesting. And what about the downside of good habits? Can they become a problem?
They can. If we fall into mindless repetition and stop being sensitive to feedback, we just go through the motions without thinking if it's still the best way or even still serving us.
So we need to stay mindful.
Right. The solution proposed is regular reflection and review. Doing something like an annual review, what went well, what didn't, what did I learn, or an integrity report checking if your actions align with your stated values. It keeps you conscious and allows for adjustments. Also, the idea of keeping your identity somewhat flexible, not tying your entire self-worth to one aspect, helps you adapt when things change.
That's really important. Yeah. Reflection and adaptability. Okay, any final thoughts on the ultimate secret to lasting results from all this?
Well, ultimately, it circles back to the beginning. It's about those thousands of 1% improvements, that compounding effect. And remembering that emotions really drive behavior, the craving comes before the response. Feeling often precedes thinking. Your actions reveal what you truly want.
Actions speak louder than words, basically.
In a way, yeah. And understanding that reward usually follows some kind of sacrifice. There's a quote mentioned, roughly, that satisfaction comes from bridging the gap between what you want and what you currently have. Desire gets things started, but it's the pleasure, the satisfaction that keeps the loop going.
Wow. Okay, so summing up. It seems that the big takeaways are, don't underestimate tiny habits. They compound hugely. Focus on becoming the person who does the things, not just the outcome. Use those 4 laws, obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, for good habits, and flip them for bad ones. And keep learning, keep reflecting.
That nails it. It's a framework for understanding yourself and making intentional changes.
This has been incredibly insightful, really practical stuff. So, for you listening, maybe think about just one tiny habit you could start today. Just one. How could you make the cue for that habit just a little bit more obvious in your world?
Yeah, and maybe consider that identity piece. How does focusing on who you want to become change how you approach building that habit?
Lots to think about. It's definitely not magic, but it feels like there's a real understandable process here you can use. Definitely encourage you to reflect on your own habits after listening to this.